Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-Minute Histories videos. And today, on a very windy morning, I am down here on the water at the Baltimore Museum of Industry, and we're not inside, we're outside, and we're going to talk about one of the pieces in their collection that is outside. In fact, it's floating. It's the tugboat Baltimore behind me. I'm thrilled that we're going to be joined by Margaret DeArchangelis from the BMI in just a moment. But before I turn it over to her, let me say just a word about the boat and the era in which it was built. The boat dates to 1906, and that's just 2 years after the great 1904 fire. When it was being built in Baltimore, the dredge called the Patapsco was still clearing debris from Union Dock. Another dredge called the Maryland was clearing debris from the Northern Central Railroad's Ore Pier in Canton. And we were building 3 new piers, piers 1, 2, and 3, in what was called the Burnt District. Today would call it the Inner Harbor. When the tugboat hit the water on September 15th, 1906, it was 80 feet long, 18 feet wide, and powered by an enormous coal-fired boiler that generated steam for 2 huge pistons. And in fact, it is the only working steam-powered tugboat left in America, which is pretty neat. When it was christened, and it was christened on that day in 1906, there were a bunch of dignitaries there, including Mayor E. Clay Timonus. Timonus had taken over the job of mayor from his predecessor, Robert McLean, who unfortunately had committed suicide from the stress of the 1904 fire. But Mayor Timonus's daughter broke the champagne bottle over the hull, and in the water it went. It did not sink, but all the dignitaries did not get on the boat. They got on an older tugboat built in 1857, also called the Baltimore, and they had a little celebration there. The reason they didn't get on the new Baltimore was it still needed a few weeks of work left to it before it could go out. The mayor, it seems, was very anxious to get this boat in the water and show progress from the 1904 fire. Incidentally, some of the other folks who were there were members of the staff from the city comptroller's office. The comptroller's office was there because the city paid for the boat, and they wanted to make sure that what they paid for actually floated. The role of the tug was an inspection tugboat. It carried city officials and harbor masters out to inspect places around the harbor. It also did its fair share of heavy-duty work, moving barges and breaking up ice. And it was a welcome boat. If you were sort of a dignitary coming in, it would go out and welcome you. Probably the most infamous boat it welcomed was a boat called the Deutschland from Germany in 1916. It was the first submarine to cross the Atlantic solo. It had evaded the French and British navies. World War I had started, but we had not entered yet. And the role of the Baltimore was to basically escort it into our harbor and make sure there was no sabotage that would compromise our then position of neutrality. The boat operated for decades up until about 1957. When it was sold to a bookstore owner. A gentleman named Alexander Luckton owned Baltimore's Poe Bookshop, and in a wonderful, wacky Baltimore way, he had amassed 100,000 children's books and put them on a barge, intending to get them over to Puerto Rico for Puerto Rican kids, and he needed locomotion to do it, so he bought the tug. Unfortunately, his health failed, and that venture never went off. The boat then went through several owners pretty quickly, but ended up in the hands of Samuel and Joanne DuPont, who had a place on the Sassafras River. The DuPonts took this tugboat and turned it into a steam-powered yacht, and they sailed around the upper Chesapeake for a couple decades. But in 1979, as the ice was breaking up, the boat sank at the edge of their pier, and they kind of didn't know what to do with it. That was the bad news. The good news is that it was only in 15 feet of water. And when a brand new Baltimore Museum of Industry opened up in 1981, the DuPont family came knocking and said, "Hey, we've got a deal for you. We'll give you the last steam-powered tugboat in America if you can get it off the bottom of the Sassafras River." And with a bunch of volunteers, led by a gentleman named Stephen Heaver, they did. They towed it over here, and it's been here ever since. Volunteers have worked on it, got it back into running order, led by a gentleman named Bob Pratt, who suggested this video, so thanks, Bob. But today, the number of volunteers has dwindled, and the boat needs a lot of love. And in fact, the Baltimore Museum of Industry is looking for a new good owner. So if you want to have the last steam-powered tugboat in America, call Margaret DeArchangelis. All right, Margaret, we are all yours.
Thank you very much, Johns. My name is Margaret DeArchangelis. I'm the Assistant Director here at the Baltimore Museum of Industry. For over 40 years, the museum has been telling the story of the people and businesses that built Baltimore. Many folks have had the opportunity to visit the museum and do our cannery tours, see our bakery exhibits, and learn about the history of Bethlehem steel. But did you know we also have artifacts scattered throughout our campus? Some of those artifacts include the wreck of the General McLean in the water near our docks. We have the cast iron dog sailor that was manufactured here in Baltimore, as well as an amazing sculpture by Baltimore County-based artist David Hess. But the most prominent artifact here on our campus is surely our Whirly crane. At 104 feet tall, the crane was originally built in 1943 and was located at the Bethlehem Steel shipyards at Sparrows Point. It built hundreds of Liberty ships over the course of its life before it was moved here to Key Highway and then eventually ended up at the museum in the 1990s. We are so lucky to have this amazing artifact. The reason that it is called a Whirly crane is that unlike many cranes that are stationary and can really only lift up and down, this crane can rotate 360 degrees. Whenever you're coming down Key Highway, whether it's day or night, you will see this amazing green crane sitting here at the exit gate to our museum. So next time you're coming along Key Highway, please stop and visit the museum, see our wonderful new exhibits inside, and take a stroll along our beautiful waterfront campus to see some of these amazing artifacts.